The United Nations was founded in 1945 to ensure collective action for global peace, development and human rights. Now, every year on October 24th, the United Nations marks the anniversary of the entry into force of the UN Charter, with the ratification of the founding document by the majority of signatories of countries present, including the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, which officially launched the United Nations into existence. Though the UN Day has been celebrated since 1948, the General Assembly recommended that the day be observed by member states as a public holiday in 1971. Now, the day is meant to be devoted to enlightening people on the aims and achievements of the UN, as well as gaining their support for its work across the globe. In the words of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, the United Nations highlights the enduring ideals of the Charter, which he says, amid stormy seas, remains the organization's shared moral anchor. But how much of that is respected by member countries today? How much impact has the UN made in its efforts to continue the core mandate of maintaining international peace and security? How has the organization contributed to the promotion of cooperation among member states and international development? And how can the role of the UN be strengthened to meet today's emerging global challenges? We will be looking at these issues and more with guests very soon on Nigeria Today. I am Anne Jibuno. Now, in the studio to discuss the relevance and impact of the United Nations in Nigeria is Ambassador Christy Mbonu, MNI. She is Nigeria's former ambassador to the permanent mission in Caracas, Venezuela. Welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thank you very much for having me.
We also have Mainasara Kogo Umar. He's an international analyst on world diplomacy. It's also good to have you on the program.
It's my pleasure to be with you. Good evening.
Okay, I'll start with you, Ambassador Christy Mbonu. Let's look at the impact of the UN. How would you rate the impact of the UN today? Is there any regional or global organ or organization that can, take the place of the UN or is doing what the UN is doing today? Is it, what I'm asking is it replaceable?
Thank you very much. The first thing I will say is, what is the mandate of this organization? What brought it into being? What birthed it for to maintain international peace and security? How far has it fared? As a diplomat, I will tell you. What brought it into being was the war, the Second World War. Have we fought any Third World War? No. So is it working? Yes, it's working. The impact is there. There is for the maintenance of international peace and security. I will tell you, as a diplomat, we believe in conflict resolution. We want to talk to one another. We don't believe in war. And that is the role of the United Nations. So I will tell you that it has succeeded, it has worked. It cannot, no regional organization can replace it. Take, for example, African Union. We finish at our local level as African. Then we have a consensus. Then we'll take what we have agreed on as a body to the United Nations. So the regional body cannot replace the role of this world body. People always argue that they've not achieved anything. They talk. It's better to talk. I say to them, one of our favorite speeches was, it's better to jaw than to war. That is the essence of this body. And to that effect, it has worked. And it should be maintained.
Okay, now, Mainasara Kogo Umar,
yes.
She has mentioned that some people say the UN has not done much. Well, beyond what such comments, how can the UN be strengthened to meet current global challenges, current problems?
Well, the UN should learn from history. The UN as a body got evolved sequel to the end of the First World War. At the end of the First World War, all the resolutions, all the decisions against Germany got to be too harsh for Germany to bear, which led to revolt by Germany and as a result of which the Allied forces decided to join their strengths and armaments in order to crush Germany. And as a result of which we now got not just the emergence of the UN after 1945, but fundamentally speaking, those 5 Allied forces that fought against Germany, United States, France, Britain, China, and the Soviet Union, which is now Russia, fundamentally speaking. Now, these forces, essentially, they decided to form themselves in order to serve as protection of the interest, not just mainly the interest of the world, but in order to avoid humiliation by Germany alone. So now we have to really see, like I said, going by the history. The history is that the inequities in global politics, the dynamics of the global economy, the inequities has to be related to humanitarian matters, the issue of disarmament, the issue of escalation of arms race as of that time. These are the forces, these are the fundamental reasons that brought about the decision. So if we go by what is going on in the world now, the UN has not achieved remarkably for the entire world, in as much as the UN has succeeded in achieving in the protection of the interests and aspirations of those 5 member countries, the Allied forces, who constitute not only the permanent members of the Security Council, but as well, and most importantly, those with the veto power to determine yes or no on any question on world politics. And the determining factor there is the protection of their interests. Okay. In Nigeria and other countries, we are witnessing many things that, if you take it practically speaking, we don't feel much of the impact of the UN, except if now that we have our own as the president of the UN.
Okay, now, Ambassador Christie, you said the UN has achieved much. Now, how fair is this veto power by the 5 nations that hold the permanent seats in the Security Council?
Definitely, it's very unfair that one country can determine there are 193 members. We take decisions and one can veto. So, of course, we know it's not fair. But the truth is that these 5, they fought the war. And we are still trying to expand because we are still fighting for the expansion, the reform of the Security Council. So it's not fair. Nigeria, at some 10 years ago, Nigeria was almost there with Brazil and others, but it was scuttled. The truth is, nobody hands over power to you on a platter. They will not hand over power. We have to really negotiate and come together. You see, Africa was almost there. Again, there is this internal squabble. Nigeria will not go, Morocco wants to go, and at the end of it all, everything went down the drain. We are still on it because it's very, very unfair that one country, we start from ECOSOC, we take decisions, we bring to the General Assembly, and then one, because it does not favor maybe her ally, or it does not favor her interest, she will veto it.
Okay, that's why we are having this program. Sarah, let's look at the issue of addressing these diversities, these challenges. What critical reforms should be put in place, to address, especially with regards to African nations?
Yes, reforms should be placed in such a way that we will see a world of global equity. Fundamentally speaking, what is going on now, especially the exodus of people from African countries down to Europe, is posing a great question mark regarding this issue of exclusiveness. Superpowers of the country, really, whether they like it or not, African nation is really transporting problems into them. We are transporting problems of terrorism, we are transporting problems of hunger, we are transporting problems of unemployment, we are exporting problems of disillusionment into them. And so many of them, look at the Brexit, for example, is part of the aftermath of that. So the UN Security Council should really take the issue of security beyond the issue of just military armament build-up. You should look at it in the context of, for example, Caribbean countries there, the Southern American countries that are facing a lot of ecological and environmental problems. Look at the issue of population control. Most countries, if you take, for example, Afghanistan, if you take, for example, Nigeria, if you take, for another example, India and Pakistan, The population these countries are producing by day is posing global contemporary challenge to the stability of the world if you don't provide amenities to cater for the population that is building up. The issue of economy is another thing. Perpetually, America is the highest debtor in the world. Yet, America is the one that will determine which country should be rich, which country should be poor in the world. This is wrong. Again, if you take the issue of protecting their interests against arms dominations, countries now are now flouting the orders of the United Nations by going ahead in arms build-up. Look at the case of, for example, North Korea. Look at the case of Iran. Look at the case of Iraq. Look at what is going on in Syria. All these have reached an extent whereby many times the resolutions they will give will play little or insignificant impact in the stability of world politics. So it is important now to democratize so that there are countries that have become so matured enough. For example, you take the issue of Brazil, take the issue of Germany, take the issue of Korea, take the issue of India and Pakistan, take Nigeria here, or even Egypt. Okay, these are countries that are eminently qualified to really be stakeholders in world politics.
Now, Ambassador Christie, let's look at Nigeria. You know, Nigeria's membership of the UN. Nigeria has been a very active member of that organization. I know the efforts have contributed immensely to the development of the UN. Now, how has this membership paid off? Has it paid off?
If you compare to what you have put in, we've not gotten much. Peacekeeping, Nigeria has been there. You know, Nigeria has lost soldiers, we've lost money. You know, we were there in Africa, talk about Liberia, so many countries. Talk about Sierra Leone, we played our role, we paid our dues, but what have we got in return? We have a president of the 74th General Assembly. It's ceremonial. It's purely ceremonial. There's nothing to leverage on. We are getting nothing. It's just that it places us on map, it gives us good image. That's all we get. You know, so if you look at it, Nigeria can't even get to be a member of the security. The country, let me give you an example. I was a special rapporteur of the United Nations on human rights and corruption. When we were going for re-election, do you know the country that fought us? Liberia, that we just liberated. And that's what we, you know, and I always say, in the foreign ministry, the era of Father Christmas is gone.
So nice.
Yeah, it's he that pays the piper will dictate it. That's why I like US. You just rubbish them, they deal with you. They give you aid, you must support them. Nigeria has been given. We are there for Sierra Leone, we are there for Liberia. What have we gotten from the UN, really? If you are really to, we are president, big deal. It's ceremonial.
Okay, now, Nasara, let's look at our quest to be a permanent member of the UN Security Council. What are the odds that a country can be added to this list, especially with these 5 countries guarding everything jealously?
Well, we have to first of all have cohesive and concrete national foreign policy. We don't have national foreign policy. If you go by Section 19 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we have items 1 to 5 there listed. Protection of national interests, protection and promotion of African interests, protection and promotion of world diplomacy and peace, protection of the interests and authorities of the world bodies, international courts, international financial institutions, respect to them, and finally, trying to promote world economic order. Now, if you take all these and then we juxtapose them with the contemporary global dynamics of politics, there are 5 things that place the directional compass of world politics today. Number 1 is politics. Number 2 is issue of security. Number 3 is issue of humanitarian services or population. Number 4 is the issue of economy. And then the final one is the issue of terrorism. These are the 5 things that are determining the directional compass of world politics today. So if Nigeria wants to benefit from this, Nigeria has to strategically has its own national policy work out. We have to work out policy if, for example, we have President of the UN, what is the agenda we have given him as our ambassador to go and entrench before the floor of the UN Security Council as well as the UN General Assembly. We have Deputy Secretary General of the UN. When she was going, what is the agenda that we have given her to go? Exactly. We are the leader in Africa, we are the leader in West Africa, we are the leader in our country. We have to evolve indigenously what are our evaluations evaluation of the problems that relates to world matters that we want these our ambassadors to go there and represent.
Okay.
And yes,
we'll talk about that when we return. You're watching Nigeria Today, and we are discussing the relevance and impact of the United Nations in Nigeria. It's now time for us to take a short break to listen to what Nigerians are saying on the issue. They spoke to Suleiman Abdul Wahab. We'll be back shortly.
It's good that Nigeria is part of a United Nation, because the common saying that a single stick of a broom cannot sweep the floor, but when they come together, they're able to sweep it more cleaner. Yeah, in terms of security, Nigeria has benefited a lot from the United Nations. Like if you go to the IDP camps, you see a lot of impact of the United Nations.
I think elsewise we've benefited a lot from the United Nations. They provided a lot of significant equipment, support and the rest, and aside from that, the security too. I mean, they usually send reinforcement during issues and all that, so I think they've played a vital role so far.
The current United Nations president is Nigeria. I think Nigeria has benefited so much because with the man at the helm of affairs in United Nations, Nigeria is bound to get more benefits as time goes on.
The case of polio eradication, the AIDS, and all the help that they used to render in so many sectors in these countries.
In terms of health, in terms of drugs, in terms of HIV health, in terms of polio, I think yesterday was polio there also, in fighting polio. That's what I can say.
If you're just joining us, you are watching Nigeria Today, and we are still here. We still have Ambassador Christy Mbono and May Nasara Kogo Umar in the studio. And of course, our discussion is on the impact and relevance of the United Nations. Now, Ambassador May Nasara, let's continue where you stopped.
Yes.
Now, what kind of agenda should be set for our representatives in the United Nations to enable us reap briefly from these positions?
Agenda that will enable us be the determinants of our economy. Agenda that will transform us from the beggar nation, or a nation that is relying on aids or assistance from the global superpowers, to the one that will be exporting on balancing of economy. An agenda that will really make Nigeria to utilize its population to become a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. An agenda that will enable Nigeria to go there as the mouthpiece of Africa, as the mouthpiece of South countries in the world, as the mouthpiece of the underdeveloped countries, as the mouthpiece of all those countries that suffers colonialism, imperialism, and various forms of underdevelopment.
Okay, now Ambassador Christy, let's look at the major challenge the UN is confronting, or rather facing, in its operation in Nigeria. What, in your opinion, what are these challenges?
The United Nations are facing a lot of challenges. Insecurity is there. You know, I know how many of their workers have been kidnapped and killed. You know, there was a time their office was even burnt. So there is this insecurity. That's the truth.
That's not just in Nigeria. I'm sure
what they are facing in Nigeria. Secondly, another problem is that the UN is facing is that Nigeria will continue to work, because no country, no one is an island. We must work with the other countries. You know, if you ask me what have they achieved? They've achieved a lot. We have UNDP. They are working a lot in North Central, in the Northeast. They are doing a lot. But the truth is that security is a problem. You know, and again, funding is a problem globally. The United States, that is the major contributor, has withdrawn the fund. So they have, this problem is not peculiar to Nigeria. It's all over, and it's affecting the United Nations work in this country. So you have funding, paucity of fund, and you have security problem also facing them. So this given, I think the country, the government works with them, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we work with them, we synergize, you know, but these are the fundamental problems that, and again, this is not again peculiar to Nigeria. The United Nations, they really don't have enforcement as such. The resolutions are there. Are they enforceable?
Okay.
Apart from Chapter 7, where they can come together to, a country that is recalcitrant. Apart from that, there is no enforcement mechanism. So these are some of the problems, challenges facing the United Nations, not only in Nigeria, but because their work is everywhere. But now the added one is the security problem.
And now, Ms. Minasara, let's look at the UN development goals. How have these goals helped Nigeria in the areas such as poverty eradication, girl-child education, agencies like UNICEF and UN Women and all that have been working in Nigeria? In your own opinion, or what's your take on their efforts?
Well, I must commend them in that direction, especially in the area of health. Where we have a problem is the internal structure in the country. The internal structure in the country is more or less elitist-centered. The internal structure has a very huge gap between the ordinary citizenry and the intendment with which the UN assistance normally comes in. So you will discover that it ends up normally in bureaucracy financing. In most cases, most of the assistance don't reach my own poor village. Most of those assistance don't reach my poor village. How far has the UN assistance gone in eradication of illiteracy? Every year we are getting numerical increase in the number of illiterate persons. How far has all the UN support gone in eradication of poverty? We are now a world capital of poverty. How far has all the UN assistance gone in stabilizing the country for security and peace? There is no part of Nigeria here that is not suffering from insecurity. How far has the Nigeria or UN assistance gone in stabilizing our democratic policy? There is no political office that is contested in Nigeria without the aggrieved parties going to court to challenge it. How far has the educational policy, educational gone to? Exactly. We don't even have up to this time around. Education, justice, poverty, all these are indices that are above the reach of common man up to now. So we have a long way to go in bringing about fundamental institutions and bringing about honest and sincere patriotic personnel to head those institutions so that it will rhyme with the real and genuine objectives of the United Nations agency. Otherwise, we will remain paradoxically a country that is aiming for development.
Now, Ambassador Christie, your final thoughts concerning what more the UN can do to make better impact in Nigeria and the African continent?
They should continue to work already. Like I said, there is a security problem, but that will not deter them. They'll continue to work with the relevant institutions like they work with INEC. They should continue to work with INEC. They should continue to work with our institutions. Look at what they are doing in eradication of polio, HIV. The problem, they should be allowed to work girl-child education. They should allow them to come in because culture at times will not allow them to do what they intend to do. But I think that Nigeria should help also because most of these problems are internal problems. United Nations cannot change your culture. United Nations cannot change your institution. They can only help to build. They worked with INEC in 2019 election. They worked with the CSOs in 2019 election. So I think they should continue to partner with them, and the country also should also play with them, work with them.
Thank you very much. That's the much we can have time for. Ambassador Christie Mbonu, Nigeria's former ambassador to the permanent mission in Caracas, Venezuela. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
And we also want to thank Minasara Kogo Umar, International Affairs Analyst, for making our time to be here.
It's my exalted honor to be with you always. Thank you.
And on behalf of the production crew and all of us here in the studio, we thank you very much for watching. I am Anne Jibuno. See you next time.